From the headquarters of Tell Us Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. All of Chile's bishops have offered their resignation to Pope Francis following 3 days of meeting with the pontiff aimed at addressing child sex abuse by Catholic priests. The bishops apologized to Chile, to the victims, and to the Pope for the scandal. It is still unknown whether Pope Francis will accept the resignations.
We want to announce that all of us, Chilean bishops here in Rome, had put our positions in the hands of the Holy Father so that he can decide freely for each of us. We thank Pope Francis for having listened to us like a father and for his brotherly corrections. Most of all, we want to ask for forgiveness for the suffering we caused to the victims, to the Pope, to the people of God, and to Chile for our serious mistakes and omissions.
Meanwhile, one of the victims, Juan Carlos Cruz, said the bishop's resignations was good news. He tweeted, "This is good for our beloved country, and for so many people have suffered because of corrupt bishops and liars. For all of the victims who survived, there's no looking back. History has been changed." Campaigning for the May 20th election has come to an end. President Nicolas Maduro held his final presidential campaign rally in the capital city of Caracas. Supporters lined the streets, creating a festive environment. Maduro was joined on stage by the Argentinian football legend Diego Maradona. Maduro said he's ready for new victories and promised to lead major economic changes.
I saw with my own eyes in Maturin people prepared to defend Venezuela. People prepared to defend the country with everything they have. The government has made some mistakes, but also a lot of positive things, in spite of the many problems they face. The people say that you can't find anything in the stores, but the same companies that produce food also produce cigarettes and alcohol. So you can't find bread, but you can find beer. Why do you think that happens? So the people who want to establish the dollar as our currency should first remember their identity. It's not me who say it, but our history. The dollarized countries only get worse. This is my first vote and I'll give it to the revolution. I'm loyal to the revolution. As my president said, they won't come back.
And on the closing day of presidential campaigning, the candidate Henry Falcon returned to his home state of Lara. It was in this state that Falcon spent 2 terms as governor. The presidential contender held a rally in the capital of Barquisimeto. Falcon is the main contender against the current president, Nicolas Maduro.
The new president of Venezuela is called Henry Falcon. We will defeat the CNE, the government, Maduro and his party, all of them.
And the third maiden presidential candidate, Javier Bertucci, closed his campaign a day earlier in Valencia. Bertucci promised a solid economy and decent salaries for all Venezuelans. His events have had some of the largest turnouts, which is especially surprising as someone who only entered politics this year. He closed his campaign by calling on Venezuelans to go to the polls as the best way to stop the economic blockade. And earlier we spoke to our correspondent in Caracas, Ian Bruce.
Campaigning officially ended at midnight. We're now into the period of electoral silence with reporting restrictions in place here in Venezuela. During the course of the day, the National Electoral Council will be installing all the voting centres across the country, all 14,638 of them, with more than 34,000 electronic voting machines ready for Sunday's vote. The international observers who began their mission yesterday, just over 150 of them. They'll be receiving a series of briefings in the course of the day, having meetings here in Caracas before some of them tomorrow, Saturday, head out towards the different voting regions in different parts of the country. Now, as we heard, the two main candidates ended their campaigns with rallies on Thursday afternoon. Henry Falcon, in his home state of Lara, drew quite a large, lively crowd there. But interestingly, according to our own reporters who were on the scene, the crowd for Henry Falcon in Lara was not quite as big as the one that turned out for Javier Bertucci, the third-place candidate, the day before in Valencia. An interesting observation there. Neither of those two, however, compared with the very large crowd that turned out here in Caracas for President Nicolas Maduro's closing rally in the center of the city on Thursday afternoon. We were there and we talked to one of the people who's organizing a delegation of international observers from the United States. Let's listen to that.
We're here in the Avenida Bolivar in the center of Caracas, where President Nicolas Maduro is holding the closing rally of his campaign ahead of Sunday's election. As you can see, it's a pretty large and lively turnout. This is a historic location in Caracas. It's been the site of many big demonstrations throughout the Bolivarian Revolution. We're in the center of Caracas, in the Avenida Bolivar, where President Nicolas Maduro is holding the closing rally of his campaign ahead of Sunday's election. Now, this has been a historic site, the location of many large demonstrations during all these years of the Bolivarian Revolution. And again today, as you can see, it's a large and lively turnout. To talk about this election campaign, we have with us Jeanette Charles. She's from Venezuela Analysis, and she's also guiding a delegation of election observers here. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me your impressions of the campaign. Does the size of this turnout, compared with much smaller turnouts I've seen at Henry Falcon's events, does that reflect the real balance of forces? What kind of a campaign has it been?
Well, I think for us at Venezuela Analysis, one of the major points that we're trying to talk about in our coverage and with our international delegation is the Venezuelan people's right to decide and determine their future. I think this manifestation, this protest, in support of the Bolivarian process kind of shows internationally and nationally that there's a continued support for the revolution, that people believe in the fight for the 21st century socialist process, not just in their own country, but across the region, and historically are following a tradition of different movements and peoples across Latin America and the Caribbean who have fought to challenge, U.S. imperialism, capitalism, and to fight for the rights of the people. And so this, as early as it is today, I mean, this is like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We still have many hours to wait till Nicolas Maduro actually shows up. I know people are coming from different parts of the city, so it's really exciting. And for myself, I was here in 2012. During Chavez's campaign in 2013, for Maduro's campaign as well, and there is an overwhelming sense of support for the process that's undeniable.
One of the things that's surprised me, and I guess would surprise many people, is that given the obviously very great difficulties that people have in daily life at the moment because of the economic war, as they call it here, that there's still such a kind of lively, upbeat atmosphere. I mean, how do you interpret that?
For me, my family history is from Haiti, from the first Black Republic of this hemisphere, and I think people are committed in the same ways to the fight of the working class and know that this revolutionary process is unlike any other and is going to be the way in which people can actually build a new society, one that challenges the economic crisis. Any of the other candidates really are proposing either full retreat to neoliberalism and capitalism, or band-aid remedies. Whereas even with some of the political contradictions that we've seen and challenges that have come about because of the economic war, people are really trying to innovate, are really trying to change their conditions, and I think for that same reason, that's why people continue to be as lively as possible and as optimistic. I mean, really, Venezuela and the Venezuelan people offer a lighthouse in some ways for the rest of the region in terms of being able to continue to move forward and usher a different process.
Just tell me briefly about the delegation you're going to be helping during this election? What are they going to be doing? What are they expecting?
Yeah, so we have a delegation of folks mainly from the United States who will be here for a week observing the elections and also meeting with Venezuelans from different grassroots movements, also different officials, as well as just civil society at large, to kind of get to know the reality behind the revolutionary process and to kind of break through what mainstream media is, preventing people from seeing. This is our second delegation as Venezuela Analysis to make that attempt to be a bridge between peoples and movements. And folks will be here in Caracas, will be around the coast. Folks will be meeting with women's groups, young people, cooperatives, the CLAP distribution networks, also learning about the history of the Guarimba violence and the opposition, in the next few years.
Thank you very much, Jeanette.
No, thank you for having me.
So that's Jeanette Charles from the Venezuela Analysis. She's also helping one of the observer missions here for Sunday's election. And as you can see, an upbeat take both on this election process and the whole Venezuelan process that goes behind it. We'll have more later.
So, less than 48 hours to go until the polls open in these elections, which President Maduro on yesterday said himself could decide the future course of Venezuela for the next 30 years. Of course, if he is elected on Sunday, President Maduro will face some very serious challenges. First and foremost, the economy, which he said it will be his absolute priority to try and resolve the problems there. Also, his call for dialogue with all sections, including possible restart of talks with the opposition in the Dominican Republic. That will not be easy, and especially this comes in a context, of course, when we know that many countries, the United States and its allies in Latin America, have already said they will not recognize the results of Sunday's vote.
We thank Ian Bruce for that extended report. In an interview with Telesur, Spanish journalist and writer Ignacio Ramonet said that the Venezuelan people are ready to overcome economic difficulties thanks to the political consciousness that Hugo Chavez brought to the country.
The Fourth Republic tried to depoliticize the Venezuelan people by creating a consumption society, artificial and really unequal. And so Chavez brought Bolivarianism to the country, which is to say political conscience. The last 19 years this conscience has grown, and we can say there is more political organization in the Venezuelan society. Social movements, students, women, campesinos and workers are organized, and that's why the Venezuelan people are able to resist the economic attacks against their own nation.
Okay, time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
¡Que viva el movimiento indígena! ¡Que viva!
Kuna, taita kuna, mama kuna. Kai pika mana yanga kajip saya kunchichu hasta wakaring.
Nos retiraron los celulares y nos obligaron a conducir el carro a pesar de que no tenía neumáticos sino en aros para una quebrada botar con el carro y las 4 personas. Apareció, decían que la prensa llegaba, se asustaron y luego los llevaron hacia la plaza de Cochabamba.
Nuestras fuentes de agua, ¿dónde que dejaron nuestros abuelos para defender? Yo les digo, nosotros ya estamos viejos, acá los señores también están viejos, pero los hijos de ustedes, los hijos de ellos, ¿qué agua van a tomar?
En la consulta popular dijimos ya no más minería en las fuentes de agua, parques nacionales, áreas protegidas. La minería continúa.
Es la peor vergüenza que han hecho las autoridades.
Welcome back. In Argentina, talks between the government of Mauricio Macri and the IMF are advancing despite resistance from social sectors. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has the details.
Negotiations between the government of Argentina and the IMF are ongoing. The government seeks a standby line of credit for $25 billion due to the ongoing crisis in the country. The meetings will continue until next week, and there are high expectations to find out what the conditions imposed by the IMF will be in order to provide this line of credit. What is known is that after this is over, the Argentine government will have to take harsh economic measures, driving the country further into recession. This will create greater crisis for the working class. Protests have already been announced for May 25 by worker unions, social movements, and human rights organizations against these negotiations between Macri and the IMF.
In Colombia, the prosecutor's office has begun several investigations into the flooding of the Cauca River at Colombia's largest hydroelectric project. Flooding has led to the evacuation of tens of thousands of people. Community leaders had previously criticized the construction of the dam, and experts had warned the mega project could endanger many lives.
Due to the uncovering of one of the Hidroituango hydroelectric tunnels, affecting more than 1,200 families.
They definitely failed in some stages of the plans. They didn't take the necessary contingency measures that would guarantee the strength of the project before putting it into operation.
This hydroelectric dam project is the biggest in Colombia, with more than $4 million invested. During the 8 years of construction, it also generated serious impacts.
The great environmental impact of these dams have been established. It's killing the second most important river in Colombia and affected the limited tropical dry forest.
According to social leaders, this was an accident waiting to happen. Since 2010, they have been fighting for inhabitants' rights. They say they have not been listened to and that their concerns have been met with hostility from the authorities.
People have been made homeless because of the police, the army, and the workers of the hydroelectric project. Because they didn't let us exercise our legitimate right to protest. We have been displaced and we took refuge in the Coliseum of the University of Antioquia for almost 8 months.
The Rios Vivos movement have condemned the persecution and murders of leaders who have spoken out against the hydroelectric dam project.
This year they killed Hugo Albeiro, who was a leader who spoke out against Hidroituango in terms of land, and they also killed his nephew, who wasn't even involved in the movement. They also killed Luis Alberto Torres, who was a member of the movement and a social and environmental rights defender.
The Rios Vivos movement has called for the Hidroituango's environmental license to be cancelled and blamed public companies from Medellin and the National Authority for Environmental Licenses. In Puerto Valdivia, the evacuation alert was declared, and the maximum alert continues in municipalities like Cáceres, Tarazá, and Caucasia.
A Colombian court has suspended the extradition process of the former FARC negotiator, Jesus Santorich. The special peace jurisdiction decided to suspend the extradition process ordered by the United States against the ex-guerrilla for alleged drug trafficking. The special peace jurisdiction has requested that the Colombian Attorney General's office deliver evidence indicating that Santorich committed a crime. The evidence would need to sufficiently justify his arrest in order for the extradition order to go through. And the Ecuadorian government has ordered the withdrawal of the additional security assigned to its embassy in London, where the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been living for the past 6 years. The announcement came after claims that the government has spent over $5 million on Assange's security. Earlier in March, his communication systems were suspended after he made political comments on Twitter, which the government in Quito thought was endangering its diplomatic relations. The Australian IT expert took refuge in the embassy in 2012 to avoid sexual abuse charges in Sweden. He has continued to deny all of those charges. In Peru, the Congress passed a bill to impose chemical castration on rapists that abuse children under 14 years old. In this first vote, the Peruvian Congress also passed life imprisonment penalties and said that there will be no statute of limitation for such offenses. Now, the bill will need final approval next week, but feminist organizations say that strong sentences are not the solution. For them, education and more protection for women and girls are the only ways to solve the problem. And Brazilian police arrested more than 200 suspects in the country's biggest crackdown on internet child pornography on Thursday. Thousands of police were involved in the day-long raids across 24 states. Close to 1 million pieces of child pornography content were uncovered by the police. The authorities have been preparing for the bust for months as complaints against online sexual exploitation of children in the country kept rising. The official residence of the Chilean President La Moneda Palace was illuminated on Thursday evening with the colors of the LGBTI flag to commemorate the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. The rainbow colors on the presidential palace mark the end of a campaign boosted by the National Movement for Homosexual Integration and Liberation to promote tolerance across Chile. This commemorates the date of May 17, 1990, when the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from its list of mental illnesses. Time now for another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are working on. United States and China have begun a second round of talks in Washington aimed at avoiding a trade war between the two countries. The Chinese Vice Premier Liu is in the U.S. as a special envoy of Chinese President Xi Jinping. Liu said the bilateral talks are progressing. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on goods worth to $150 billion to combat what he says is Beijing's misappropriation of U.S. technology. And the Ebola virus has spread to many densely populated cities in the Democratic Republic of Congo, escalating fears of an epidemic. 23 people have died of the infection so far, and on Thursday, 11 new cases have been reported. The World Health Organization will hold an emergency meeting to discuss the danger of the Ebola upsurge. The worst Ebola epidemic in West Africa was between 2014 and 2016. In Spain, people celebrated the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia on Thursday. Our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marin, has more.
Spain joined celebrations for the International Day Against LGBTphobia. People celebrated 28 years since the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from their list of mental illnesses. Spain is one of the countries that has developed protection for LGBT rights the most, especially after 2005, when they became one of the first countries to legalize homosexual marriage. However, there is still a lot of work to do. Hate crimes against the LGBT community have increased. In 2016, the rate increased by 36% compared to 2015. A march to protest hate crimes against LGBT people took place in Madrid, starting at Plaza de la Villa at the old City Hall.
May 20th this year marks the first ever UN World Bee Day. The aim is to encourage people across the world to preserve and protect these vital but endangered creatures. Bees are essential for maintaining the world's food supply. 1/3 of all food production depends on their role as pollinators. However, their population has been drastically reduced due to the use of pesticides, parasites, and climate change. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telus4tv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TELUS Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.